Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Tina Kuckkahn is in her third week as head of the First Peoples Fund, a nonprofit organization that supports Native artists and arts education. It's a role that she is uniquely qualified for after a 3-decade career developing cultural outreach and philanthropic support for Native causes. We'll talk with her about the current state of arts funding, the role art plays in both personal expression and entrepreneurship, and her passion for riding Harley-Davidson motorcycles. That's coming up after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. It's National Truth and Reconciliation Day, also known as Orange Shirt Day, honoring the survivors and children lost in Canada's residential school system. As Dan Karpinchuk reports, on the eve of the day, a multi-million-dollar settlement and an apology were announced for one northern school.
The agreement in principle is aimed at compensating the former students of the Isle La Crosse boarding school, just under 300 miles north of Saskatoon.
Simply put, these schools were a mistake, and they shouldn't have existed.
The Premier of Saskatchewan, Mo Scott, went to the community on Monday.
Today, on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, I apologize to you. And as part of this agreement, the province has agreed to pay $40.2 million to address the 4 major pillars of compensation under the class action that was filed.
The compensation, Mo says, is an effort to promote reconciliation, healing, wellness, education, language, culture, and commemoration in the community of Isle La Crosse. The residential schools operated across most of Canada from the mid-1800s to the late 1900s in an attempt to assimilate First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children into white society. It's believed about 150,000 children were forced to attend the schools. Thousands were physically, emotionally, and sexually abused. Many died. The Saskatchewan government expects the proposed settlement will be approved by the courts by early next year. I'm Dan Karpinchuk.
The U.S. Interior Department has reversed a Biden administration decision to give Alaska tribes legal jurisdiction over Native allotments. As KNBA's Rhonda McBride tells us, the order could return millions of acres of land to state control and shut down the Eklutna tribe's new casino near Anchorage.
This latest federal opinion attempts to restore a 1993 Interior Solicitor's opinion issued during President George W. Bush's administration. It gave the state jurisdiction over Alaska Native allotments. But last year, the Interior Solicitor in the Biden administration, Bob Anderson, issued a new interpretation of that decision. It gave jurisdiction over Native allotments to the tribes, which cleared the way for the Eklutna tribe to operate a small casino on a Native allotment. Last week, the Trump administration's Deputy Secretary of the Interior overrode Anderson's opinion and instructed all department bureaus, including the National Indian Gaming Commission, to follow the 1993 opinion. Anderson now lives in Anchorage and is a visiting professor at Harvard. He says the reversal of his decision is wrong, that Native allotments in Alaska should be regulated by the tribe just as they are in the lower 48.
It's been the law in the lower 48 forever, and Alaska is part of the United States, and the same federal laws apply here as they do everywhere else. So I'm fairly confident that we'll continue to prevail on these questions.
In April, the state of Alaska sought an injunction from a federal court in Washington, D.C. to shut it down. So what happens now that the Interior Department has revoked tribal jurisdiction over Native allotments in Alaska? The state has not said what its next step will be. Patty Sullivan, Communications Director for the State Department of Law, said the new opinion calls for the Interior Department to reevaluate actions taken by the National Indian Gaming Commission. Alaska's Attorney General Stephen Cox applauded the decision and said it restores jurisdictional balance that Congress intended. But despite last week's opinion, the native village of Eklutna said its Chinan Gaming Hall remains open. The tribe's president, Aaron Leggett, said it will also review the opinion to clarify questions of legal jurisdiction. In Anchorage, I'm Rhonda McBride.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by Drummond Woodsum, a full-service law firm whose nationally recognized tribal nations practice provides services to tribal nations and their enterprises and to companies that do business with tribes across the country. More at dwmlaw.com.
Now more than ever, the supporters of this and all Native One programs deserve a little extra love. Learn more about all our public radio underwriters and web-based sponsors at koahnic.org/supporters-spotlight.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Tina Kuckkahn is beginning a new chapter in her decades-long career uplifting and supporting Native artists and culture bearers. Kuckkahn is the new president and CEO of First Peoples Fund, a Native-led arts nonprofit organization with a national focus. For nearly 20 years, she helped create more opportunities for Native students at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. She oversaw the expansion of the college's Indigenous Arts campus. She's an expert at building structures for Native people to find their strengths for the greater good of their communities. Tina Kuckkahn joins us as this month's Native in the Spotlight. If you would like to offer a comment or a question, you can do so by calling us at 1-800-996-2848. That number again, 1-800-996-2848, and we have the phone lines open right now, and we're waiting for your call. Later in the hour, we'll also spend time remembering Indian Gaming Association Chairman Ernie Stevens Jr., who died last week at the age of 66. Joining us now from Lake Tomahawk, Wisconsin, is Tina Kuckkahn. She is the president and CEO of the First Peoples Fund. She is a citizen of Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe, and a descendant of the Lac Courte Oreille Band of Ojibwe. Tina, hello, and welcome back to Native America Calling.
Bonjour, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Bonjour. Well, also congratulations on your new position. It hasn't even been a whole month yet. How are you settling in?
It feels really great. I've been so warmly welcomed by both the staff team and board, and I have already been friends with so many of the artists connected with First Peoples Fund that it really just feels like coming back to the family.
That sounds wonderful. Well, tell us more about First Peoples Fund and what you're most focused on right now within the organization.
Yeah, thank you. First Peoples Fund has been around for 30 years. The incredible leadership of Poirier, our founding president, and the fact that she continues on in her role as a senior fellow, continuing to give her guidance. She has an amazing opportunity right now where she's documenting some of the Community Spirit Award recipients over time and just really capturing their words of wisdom and the beauty of their lives. So it's really great as we look ahead to the future that we're also really firmly rooted in the legacy work that Lori has created. And over the past year, Laura Evans, an outstanding job continuing to guide and provide great leadership. So there's so much to look forward to at First Peoples Fund. When I first, decades ago, there a lot of focus was on our Community Spirit Award recipients, and they continue to be front and center. Really excited. In a couple of weeks, on October 14th, we're going to get to honor recipients of the Community Spirit Award in Santa Fe. So that's something exciting to look forward to. As I just sort of think about how it's grown over the years, started out with Community Spirit Awards and then saw the need for professional development opportunities. So fellowships began to appear, cultural capital fellowships, providing support for artists as they continue to grow and develop, and providing grants for organizations across the United States. So that's really to see how the different aspects and programs have grown in response to just expanding the Indigenous arts ecology. Because we feel that investing in artists invests in our communities.
So much going on, just really exciting, Tina. As the head of this big nonprofit organization, obviously fundraising is going to be one of your primary duties, and yet we've seen such a shift in the environment for grants and philanthropy over the past few months. How do people in your position have to adjust?
It's true, there's been a dramatic shift. So we're always vigilant. We're staying on top of what's happening in the changing landscape in these political times. And what we're so able to do, one of our strengths is always that we remember, how did our ancestors survive? How did we get along? Well, we did it because we were part of communities. And really the work that we're doing to raise funds to support our artists and culture bearers all comes down to relationships. So yes, we have strong partnerships with amazing foundations who continue to stand strong, even in these times. And we also, understand that individuals are actually the majority of philanthropy in the United States. And so there are some wonderful relationships that we already have and continue to grow and build on. And then we can think about how we support ourselves, how we continue to support the indigenous arts ecology by purchasing art from Native artists, and how the work that they create is actually such an important part of the tapestry of our communities, that they're really essential to, our ability to live and thrive, especially during these times. We're not going to stop being who we are, and our arts and our expression of our languages and all of the things that make us indigenous are going to continue to guide us during these difficult times.
Thinking more about the importance of Native arts, how widespread do you think the recognition is of Native arts in general? And is there an education process that you're constantly aware of just to inform not only Native people, but non-Natives as well about the importance of what this means, what art means to our communities?
Thank you for that question. I think it's a really important topic of discussion because, as we know, historically, our artists were at the center of our lives, and we relied on the carvers. We relied on the weavers for those things that we use every day, those things that we use in our ceremonies. So they've always been central and integral. And so it's been a continuous prosecution, especially our non-Native allies and friends, helping people understand how integral these aspects are, that these aren't objects, that these are living parts of our cultural expression. So there's a lot to inform, and just providing opportunities for people to meet artists. Of course, there are many well-established artist networks and markets, but just those opportunities to engage in one-to-one conversations with artists. If you're at a gallery or if you're at an event, there are so many opportunities to come into our community, participate in some of the amazing cultural events that we have. We certainly have a thriving, summer season and wonderful. So there are so many ways for people to get to know artists and to support their work.
Tina, recent actions by the federal government to disengage from diversity efforts, how much do those affect the work that you're going to be doing with First Peoples Fund?
Well, I think it's important for everyone to understand that, first of all, even if we were covered under DEI, we would be against any actions against our people, that we all have a right to live and be part of this world and to actually protect this world. That's one of my concerns. But there's so much that we can be doing today and will continue to do. We know that we are, as tribal nations, we have a unique political status. So we don't fall under the general rubric of DEI. And again, even if we did, we would be opposed to actions targeting us and other people of color and other people who are vulnerable at this time. But have to remember that we have this long history of relationship with the United States government. We know that as tribal nations, we engaged in treaty making, which is part, established by the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. So we have a different type of political status and a different relationship with the federal government. Nevertheless, we know that will continue to be challenged, as we're seeing every day. And so that's why it's important that we get as much education as we can, that we unify with other tribal nations and other peoples and communities, because I think it's really important that we continue to stand up and be who. And I also wanted to share that, for Native people, this really isn't anything new. I mean, it feels really intense right now, and it is. but effort to control us, to oppress us, are nothing new to us. We've been experiencing this for centuries. So I think that that's why the arts and cultures and our languages are more important now than ever, because that is the expression of who we are, and that's so much a part of what we're fighting for.
Mm-hmm. One aspect of First Peoples Fund that has always really impressed me is your organization's focus on fostering an understanding and awareness about the business of art, what it takes to actually go out and sell artwork and run an art business in a sustainable fashion. Tell me more about what do you think the cumulative effect of that type of education has been over the years?
Yeah, I think that goes back to Indigenous self-determination, that learn best from each other, and that's why we have people who are leading the workshops, leading the business development opportunities, people who are established, who've learned the tricks of the trade, as it were, who have learned lessons from the past, that we're always in an opportunity to continuously learn, improve, and grow and develop. So learning these lessons from other Indigenous artists is one of the key factors in leading to the success of other future generations. And one of the things I really appreciate about First Peoples Fund is how it is intended to be intergenerational, in the sense that the artists who are the Community Spirit Awards of former years, now generations, members of their families are coming forward as Community Award recipients or their Cultural Capital Fellows. So we're just seeing how you grow this over time, how you invest in our people, and then it flows out into the larger economy. If we're supporting the artists, then they're also able to, purchase homes and make a living, and all of these things uplift all of our peoples. And I think there's been Indigenous art markets, and with the opportunity to access artists through the internet has also been major. It took a while for that to evolve, because at first, a lot of times when you want to purchase an artwork, you really need to interact with it, and you want to, especially if you need to engage with the person. So, but we're learning that we can also purchase amazing pieces of Native art on well.
All right. Tina, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about your previous work at Evergreen State College and also the work you've done with Indian Collective. But right now, we do have to take a short break, and we've got the phone lines open for listeners who would like to join this conversation. If you'd like to ask Tina a question, you can do so, 1-800-996-2848. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says he's putting the issue about top military medals for soldiers involved in the Wounded Knee massacre to rest, saying that they will not be revoked. It's among the many fronts where the Trump administration is working to diminish decades of work by Native Americans to ensure accurate narratives of history in museums, galleries, and even national policy. We'll find out what Native historians and others think on the next Native America Calling.
Support provided by Amerind. Amerind is 100% tribally owned and partners with tribes and their businesses to provide affordable commercial insurance coverage, protect tribal sovereignty, and strengthen Native American communities by helping to keep dollars in Indian country. Information about property, liability, commercial auto, and workers' comp available at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. We're talking with Tina Kuckkahn, who is the new president and CEO of the First Peoples Fund. Tina joins us as this month's Native in the Spotlight to talk about her dedication to uplifting Native arts. Join us with comments or questions. Just call 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Tina, before First Peoples Fund, you were the founding director of the House of Welcome, Longhouse Education and Cultural Center at Evergreen State College. You were there for more than 20 years. Tell us more about that role and how it shaped your career.
I loved working at the Longhouse. It was so exciting. The idea was it was the first building of its kind on a public campus in the United States to really affirm Indigenous presence in space. And I was very much welcomed by the Pacific Northwest tribal people. Even though I'm an Ojibwe from the Great Lakes area, I felt very welcomed and supported there. Spent 20 years of my life there, and that's where my love of Indigenous arts and cultures really had an opportunity to blossom. So we started out working with 5 local tribal nations there in the South Salish Sea area, and then began to grow it into a national program with a regranting aspect. And then eventually it became international as we began to develop relationships with our Maori relatives in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We've hosted a couple of international Indigenous visual artists of the Pacific Rim gatherings, and those were life-changing for all who were involved. It was at that time that I saw the power of having dedicated space for the creation of Indigenous art, and so working with Master Carver Lionel Grant from New Zealand, we developed the Indigenous Arts Campus Master Plan, along with John Paul Jones, a Choctaw architect who also designed the Longhouse, and created a series of art-making spaces. And those are still utilized today for students at the college, as well as the tribal nations that surround the area and the tribal communities. So it was really one of the highlights of my life to work there and to just really see what happens when you simply provide space for artists and provide the tools and resources. Then you just step back and let the magic happen. And we saw a lot of magic happen in those spaces.
And one of those artistic spaces that you mentioned was an Indigenous wood carving studio for students to learn the craft. Tell us more about that studio, what it took to get that started, and what was the need specifically for it?
Well, weaving and carving are 2 of the primary art forms in the Pacific Northwest, and so we knew that we wanted to create spaces for those art forms in particular. And the Longhouse is a multi-purpose space, and it has classroom spaces, but it wasn't set up to, have the big machinery that's needed for the carvers. Dempsey Bob, this amazing Northwest carver, always said that if our old people had access to these bandsaws and power tools, they'd have went to town. So we wanted to create a space so folks could go to town. So we built a small carving studio with support from the Ford Foundation, and in that studio created probably one of the most unique buildings in the entire continent, which is the Fiber Art Studio. It has a Maori name, Paimarire, and the entire building reflects the relationship that grew over time, as I had mentioned, with the Pacific Northwest and then the South Pacific Indigenous peoples, and specifically our Maori relatives. So the building itself, the roof is the keel of a canoe, and there are entrances on both sides that were carved by amazing artists, carved in the wood carving studio, but what they did was they created a home for the weavers, because weavers don't often get as much attention as folks who are building these monumental carvings and, story poles and all of the monumental sculptures, which are significant and very important. But we also wanted to create a beautiful home for the weavers as well.
Mm-hmm. After Evergreen State, you worked with Indian Collective and helped strengthen their grant-making system. Tell us a little bit more about that. And seems like fundraising has been a big part of your career throughout all these different projects.
Right, because it's all about relationships, and many of the relationships carried forward. And I was really honored to join Indian Collective, the leadership of Nick Tilson and Gabby Strong. Gabby invited me to join her foundation team. What was extraordinary is that she built this foundation during COVID, and they had a goal to get $12 million in grants out to people who needed it, including artists and entrepreneurs. And they got $12 million out in 1 year's time while they were building a foundation. So I came in to support and to help grow the foundation, and eventually led the team of 18 people. And the thing that was so meaningful to me, I have this degree to teach Spanish, and I'd often wondered how will I utilize that. Well, the grant making that we did at Indian Collective was across Turtle Island, inclusive of Mexico and north of the Medicine Line in Canada. So was able to work together with the team to create grant-making materials and opportunities, communications in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. And even though we recognized, yes, those are colonizer languages, at least those would help address some of the barriers that might be between artists trying to access resources across Turtle Island. So that's something that always felt really powerful and important, is we always recognize we are all relatives and that we did not impose those colonial borders. So we're not going to recognize them. We're going to continue to honor those relationships.
Tina, in addition to all of this administrative work that you do, leadership positions, you're also an artist yourself. You do beadwork, you do painting. Tell us about how you got started as an artist and what that's done for you, and how maybe being an artist supports your work, being a leadership, having this leadership role with now First People's Fund and some of these other projects you've been on over the years.
Thank you. I think I'm like a lot of people who would sort of shy away from saying I'm an artist. I joke that I'm an administrator with artistic tendencies because I do like to engage in our cultural arts in particular. I love to dance and design regalia and all of those things. And I think that really helps in terms of being completely aligned with the work that we do at First People's Fund and really supporting the artists and making sure that they have what they need to express themselves. I think that artists are some of the most important people in the world right now because we're at a time of crisis. And I think it takes the imagination and creativity of artists to be able to see the world in a different way and to imagine new solutions. So we all should be supporting Indigenous artists because I think that they will have some of the greatest ideas and opportunities for us all to move forward.
What do you think some of the biggest challenges are, Tina, facing artists today? I mean, I just think so much now with technology and AI, and it just seems like it's so much more competitive, and there are so many more types of media available. What do artists tell you when you talk with them and they just express their concerns about the industry?
I think there are definitely new issues facing us and a lot of complexity. I often go back to founding pillars of my life, artistic pillars. Bruce Miller from Skokomish said, artists were the first historians, and we can look to their art to understand who they were as a people. And then we have Hazel Pete, who is a master Chehalis weaver, and she said, Native people have always used what was available, and today we have the world. I think that really opens the doorway for all the contemporary expression of who we are today, utilizing all the materials. Because I know that another challenge to our people is limiting access to resources. You know, wood carvers need access to old growth cedar, and we don't go in and mow down forests. We work with cedars that are already, that are already down in the mountains. But just getting access to those is even harder, and some of the environmental challenges through pollution and other things are really impacting our fiber artists' ability to go out and harvest their weaving materials. So there are a lot of challenges, no doubt about it. But I think that we always had to just remember who we are and how we've always done things, which was to rely upon each other. And I see that happening, the artists, being generous of heart, sharing access to wood if they have it, or weavers being able to share techniques on how to create natural dyes using natural materials, because our art is always influenced by the lands in which we live. So I think we just need to continue to anchor ourselves in who we are. Let some of the noise of the world die down a little bit. We had these historic trade networks for a reason, and that's how we would exchange and have access to all kinds of materials. So I think we can consider some of those ways of continuing to revitalize how we interact with each other as relatives.
You've also written about the Anishinaabe teachings, like the prophecies of the seven fires. Mm-hmm. Tell us more about those teachings and how you apply them in your own life.
I try really hard to live by those values, and one of the things I love about First People's Fund is that they're so well aligned in terms of who we are as people, the reciprocity, the respect, the love that we have for our people, our ability to speak our truth, our ability to be courageous in trying times. All of these things inform my life, both personally and professionally. And that's partly why I feel so at home at First People's Fund, is everyone that I've met and all of the artists and culture bearers also live those values. I think they're really important for us to lean on those as we move forward. And they're just really good guiding principles, because the world can feel a little crazy right now, but we can go stand on our mother and just really get grounded and really tap into that energy. And then we're also putting our own good energy out into the world, because we also have obligations to protect our mother as a Anishinaabe woman, I have a cultural responsibility to protect the waters. And so that helped influence a growing idea that began a couple of years ago as I looked at the tribal canoe journeys of the Pacific Northwest and what that has done to reclaim and revitalize art forms all connected to the water and being on canoes, and thought, what could that mean for our people of the Great Lakes? Well, one of the things that it could mean is that we might respond to the call of the seventh fire prophecy. So we have teachings about how 7 prophets came to our people, and they spoke of different fires, which were different eras of time. They described what would happen in each of these fires or these periods of time. They said that one day in the 7th fire, there'd be a new people, the Oshkebamadazig. They would rise up and they would go back along the trail to seek what our ancestors left for us to find and to pick up. So as we began to think about what could the Great Lakes canoe journey look like, or what could it mean for our people, the ideas began to form that perhaps we might retrace our migration. Our people migrated, the Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi people, from the East Coast and journeyed inland following the prophecy to follow the Miga Shell until we found the place where the food grows on water, which of course is our beautiful monoman, the wild rice that grows throughout the Great Lakes area. So the idea is that in the 7th Fire Gmon journey, we're going to start next summer on the solstice. We're going to begin to travel from the East Coast, traveling up the St. Lawrence Seaway, and then over a series of summers, we're going to make this migration journey by canoe, and we're going to go see what our ancestors left for us to find.
And that sounds really, really exciting. Wow, Tina, just so much going on, so many visions. I also want to talk to you about your motorcycles. That's the picture we have on the website today at NativeAmericaCalling.com. You on your Harley decked out in a fringe leather jacket. How long have you been riding?
Since I was 12. So that's a long time. Yeah. The neighbor friend, he crashed his Honda Enduro, and he said, Dad, the dad said that I could buy it for the cost of repair. He says, how much is it? I said, $325. He says, well, I don't have that. And I said, well, if I can come up with it, can I buy the bike? He said, sure. And he thought he got rid of me. Well, at the end of the summer, I said, let's go, Dad. He said, what? But I grew up in a family that rides motorcycles, and some of my fondest memories were taking motorcycle rides up to Lake Superior, which is just at the heart of so many of our people's beliefs and spiritual ways. So I always had that strong connection. And, I became a single mom, and over time, I just had other priorities, but I always wanted to have my own Harley Davidson. I'd had like Yamaha and Honda and this and that, but once I became an empty nester at 58 years old, I went out and bought myself a Harley Davidson. I got a 22 Street Bob, and it's powerful. So, just letting folks know it's never too late for a dream to come true. Sometimes it's a dream deferred, and also that we can also make our own dreams happen, and we should.
Yeah, and then of course, being from Wisconsin, have you ever toured the factory there in Milwaukee?
Believe it or not, I haven't.
Just one more thing to add to that bucket list for sure. Jeez. Well, some more big news. First People's Fund just announced the Community Spirit Awards for 4 artists. Tell us a little bit more about what goes into these awards, and if you can share who these artists are.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's been going on for a very long time in terms of this has been one of the founding programs of First People's Fund. And what it's about is just really recognizing people who embody that community spirit, that they make tremendous art. They're pillars in their communities, but they're also about giving to others, that they're selflessly creating this work, not just for themselves, but for other generations, people in their families, and everyone else. We have an opportunity to really celebrate some beautiful people. It began with Jennifer Easton, who was a very generous donor, and her love of Indigenous arts. And so this has been one of the founding programs of First People's Fund, and this year we're honoring 6 individuals, and we're going to be honoring them in Santa Fe. So we're going to be at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture in Santa Fe on October 14th, and folks can still get their tickets to attend and see how many wonderful artists are uplifting this year. And several of them are fiber artists. We have Silver Galleto, Cloverdale Rancheria of Pomo Indians, and Janie Verrett Luster from Huma Nation, and Sonia Moody Jurado from Confederated Tribes of Siletz, and Julia Martin, Wampanoag Tribe of Gayhead, and Lisa Moorhead Hillman, Karuk and Yurok. And so these are all amazing fiber artists. And in addition to that, Terrell Gosian, I'll have to meet him in person to get the correct spelling or pronunciation of his name. He's San Carlos Apache. And he does some really cool work where he's continuing the art form of Apache violin. And he also does these amazing pencil drawings of contemporary people, family members and others, reflecting his Apache tradition. So what a great opportunity to bring forward these folks into the public and to celebrate the great work that they've been doing.
All right. Tina, thank you so much for joining the show today. It's just been a pleasure talking with you, learning about all the work that you've done, your vast experience. You really inspire me a lot, and I'm looking forward to just all of your leadership and more big things coming from First Peoples Fund.
Oh, make way, Stan.
Absolutely. We're going to take another short break here. We're going to come back and we're going to pivot. We're going to talk about the late Ernie Stevens Jr., who passed away last week, and we have guests who will join us and people who were close to Ernie Stevens Jr., and they will share their memories and talk about his legacy as well. And of course, the phone lines are open for those of you who would like to join the conversation. Just call us at 1-800-99-NATIVE. That's 1-800-996-2848. We do have the phone lines open. Producers are standing by, so give us a call. We'd really like to hear from some listeners today. 1-800-996-2848.
The annual 2025 Indian Nations Conservation Alliance National Conference happens October 14th in Las Vegas. This three-day gathering of tribal leaders, professionals, youth, and community members unites voices and action around conservation, innovation, and indigenous stewardship of Indian lands and resources. The Indian National Finals Rodeo will be there too. Info and registration at inca-tcd.org. Inca supports this show.
You're listening to Native America Calling. We are remembering the life and career of Indian Gaming Association Chairman and Oneida Nation of Wisconsin citizen Ernie Stevens Jr. He led the influential tribal gaming organization through 13 terms and was also a council member for his tribe. 1-800-996-2848 is the number to join the conversation. We have two guests joining us now. From Washington, D.C., we have Jason Giles. He is the executive director of the Indian Gaming Association. He is Muskogee. Jason, welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And joining us from Grand Rapids, Michigan is Levi Rickert. He is the publisher and editor of Native News Online and Tribal Business News. He is Prairie Band of Potawatomi. Levi, you are also a frequent guest of the show. Welcome back.
Yeah, Miigwech for having me back today.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, I want to begin with you and just go ahead and just tell us how you're feeling right now. Obviously, this is just such a shock. It was very unexpected, the loss of Ernie Stevens Jr.
Yes, well, I've been working with Chairman Stevens for 19 years when I first arrived at Indian Gaming Association, and it really is a very sudden and very tragic death. We just saw him in D.C. about a week ago, and we had talked to him that day, and he was fine, and now he's gone, and just shows you that. You've got to just take everything day by day, especially now with his passing, and we're thinking about his family, and we'll deal with, the political fallout and all the ramifications of losing such a presence in Indian country and frankly, a presence on Capitol Hill to help further the Indian country's agenda, be it not just gaming, but all levels of concerns for Indian country. He never shied away from taking on a a topic that had nothing to do with gaming. It was always about tribal sovereignty and what the tribal leaders wanted out of him and out of this organization. And I think that's what we're going to try to make his memory and his legacy here at Indian Gaming Association. It really was about empowering the tribal leaders who in turn would empower him, and he would take that message right to the halls of power here in D.C. So it's going to be hard to replace, but we're going to focus on his family and the United Nation, and we're going to go to Green Bay this weekend and have some wonderful services and remember him and talk about him. And, it's hard to process. And I know our friend Levi on the line as well. He was with me in D.C. when Chairman was here, and, everything seemed fine. And we know he had been taking care of himself and better care of himself, and this is just a tragic circumstance.
Levi, on Native News Online, you refer to Ernie Stevens Jr. as a giant warrior, and I think that was just such an appropriate analogy because, like a lot of people, I saw Ernie Stevens at conferences. I would see him in airports, and he was a huge man physically, and he always just presented himself so regally. His hair was always perfect. He was always dressed perfect. He just personified strength and pride and just that spirit of native power that I think we all could relate to. But I want to ask you, Levi, what was he like on a personal level, and what should people know about Ernie Stevens Jr. who maybe never met him in person?
Well, I think one of the characteristics I really have come to enjoy and appreciate about Ernie was the fact how passionate and loving he was. He's as you said, a big man, right? And when he put that cowboy hat on, he was really in charge, right? And so, but no, he was just so compassionate to people. I know when I started Native News Online, he was making a keynote address at a conference, and he stopped, like maybe halfway through the thing, and he said, "And I just want you to know, Levi Rickards in the audience." And then he said, he founded Native News Online. I have to tell you, he made me feel like 10 feet tall. and it was like, and then the tributes that I've been seeing that have been sent to me, we posted, I've seen on Facebook, lets me know I wasn't in a league of my own. He was generous and promoted so many other people across Indian country. To me, that is a trait of a great person who is almost unselfishly promoting others. He always was promoting our elders, referring back to the history of the early days of the National Indian Gaming Association. And he mentioned Gay Kingman up when Jason and I were in the room with him at NCAI. And it just always taking it off himself, because he was a powerful man in D.C. I remember going to Capitol Hill, and I was totally amazed. I mean, people came up to him. And I think I wrote how, in my tribute, that usually congressional aides are bringing the congressman or the senator up to the host, but upon entering the room, this people in Congress, members of Congress, already knew Ernie. They walked up, embraced him, gave him a hug, and big old smile on their face. And he represented Indian country so well, and that's one of the things we're going to miss.
Mm-hmm. Jason, back to you. And I want to talk about the impact that Ernie Stevens Jr. had on tribal gaming, but I also would like for you to share what you remember about him most on a personal level, and maybe even a favorite memory you have of time spent with Ernie Stevens Jr.
Chairman Stevens, one of the things that people don't know about him is he did have a really good, playful, teasing sense of humor behind the scenes. And he was sort of a loving guy, and he had a lot of empathy for people, and a lot of that extended from his struggles growing up, and he briefly talked about it. It was no secret that he told everybody he was a recovering alcoholic, and I think those years of recovering, and he always said, "I'm still recovering." That frames a person's outlook on life, and it frames a person's outlook towards other people. And he recognized if people were down right now, you don't give up on them, and you don't turn them away. You you try to help them whatever they needed in that instance. And I think that came from, his own struggles and what he had to constantly battle within himself. So that was sort of out of the public view, but I think it made him stronger in the public view because, as Levi said, he was just such a presence for Indian country to have on Capitol Hill. And, when people like Senator McCain are coming up to him and Senator Inouye and of course, our beloved Senator Campbell, who's still with us, they loved having Ernie there, and they loved having Ernie be able to come in to the chambers of the Senate and, explain to whoever the Senate Majority Leader was at the time, why Indian country is important, why the funding is important. And, it was almost never solely about gaming. It was about tribal sovereignty and trying to lift all reservations and the quality of life on all reservations. And, personal stuff, again, the other side of it, we're working so hard and everything, but once you get them to dinner or get them behind closed doors, those were the best parts of it. And it's why, we had such a good working relationship with everyone on the staff. And it's why, frankly, he was the chairman for so long. I think, that kind of personality and that kind of person is just, hard to run against. And, but he's going to leave a legacy of just trying to keep people united and move forward with one voice. Those were his two mantras. And, some people thought he might have moved too slow on issues, but I think that usually worked out in our favor. Mm-hmm. Let other people get out ahead first and then see where they make mistakes. And then, we sort of refine our messaging off of that. So also, and frankly, the biggest one, he had an incredible ability to work both sides of the aisle. He always made it a point to attend Republican and Democratic national conventions. He always made it a point to go see, both sides of the aisles, friends on both sides, even if he was just in town for one particular person. Always stop by. So that was really something that I think this organization is going to hold on to and has served us well even right now. Is you can't really frame us one way or the other. We have played it straight down the middle, and we have friends on both sides of the aisle, and those friends were mostly friends of Chairman Ernest Stevens. So we thank him for that.
Jason, 13 terms. I mean, I as long as I can remember, Ernie Stevens Jr. was, he was the chairman of the Indian Gaming Association. I mean, is it possible just to understate his legacy and just the impact that he has had on tribal gaming?
No. In fact, if anything, I think it probably, to your point, it is understated. And you'd say, well, he's in the Gambling Hall of Fame and, he's very well known. But people don't realize that when I first came on in 2006, 2007, and I was just junior legal associate here, that the attacks on Indian gaming were nonstop. And it wasn't just from, the normal folks. It was commercial gaming was against us. A lot of people in Congress were against Indian gaming. And, Ernie had to endure a lot of slights and just brush offs from all those groups. And to his credit, he never went into boxer mode or anything like that. He was a boxing champion. His mantra was always, let's just be statesmen about it and go back at them and just trying to keep engaging with them. And here we are. I'd say the past 5-6 years, we've never had a better relationship with commercial gaming. A lot of people in the industry started embracing what Indian gaming was doing, and that was just his messaging, right down the middle. If these people hate me, I'm not going to hate them. We're just going to keep reaching out to them. So those types of battles, and there's other tribal leaders around the country that would know what I'm talking about, and tribal leaders that frankly were threatened with jail and everything else from their state governments. They know the kind of threats that were out there, and the fact that Ernie had to go take those on and sit down and break bread with people that he knew were hostile. It's credit to him that he just, didn't get up and walk away or take offense that, whatever goofball Indian joke the only way they could relate to Native Americans was through stereotypes. And he worked through all that and sort of set a good example for the folks at National Indian Gaming Association and now Indian Gaming Association, that's the way you engage with our detractors. You just keep going at them and keep working.
Mm-hmm. Levi, back to you. We're talking about Ernie Stevens Jr., his business accomplishments, of course, his legacy with regard to Indian gaming, but what else will he be known for beyond those professional accomplishments?
I think on a real personal level, I've always really enjoyed how close he was with his family. And I remember having a conversation about how he grew up in a environment. His parents were divorced, and his dad worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and his mother was a member of the American Indian Movement. So you really had opposing viewpoints in Indian country, all within to help shape who Ernie was. But at the end, he would put such loving notes and photos of his father on Facebook, and I talked to him about it. And, you know, he didn't know his father a whole lot as he was coming up, but in the later years, Ernie was there to take care of him. And I think one of the most successful accomplishments, and particularly we who are Native, where, let's just be honest, educational attainment is still something that just a lot of people still don't have. We still have first-generation people going to college. All of Ernie's children have educations, and I think at least one of his daughters has a doctoral degree. And I think that's a testament to how well he and Cher raised those children and raising strong Native families. So I think that family aspect of him, it's just, he was successful in his professional life, career, but equally successful, and probably to him maybe more meaningful was the success that he saw within his family. And he loved his mother. I mean, she would be at conferences, and he would always call her out and recognize her. And his wife, often NCAI winter sessions right around Valentine's Day. So he'd call out the guys at the conference, say, "Hey guys, I've already sent Cher the flowers. I'm here in DC. She's back home. Are you doing the right thing? Do the right thing, guys." And that type of messaging to me just shows what a versatile leader he really was, both professionally and personally.
Mm-hmm. Jason, anything you'd like to add with regard to the Stevens family? Obviously, just many members of that family enormously successful throughout the years.
Yes, I mean, he was certainly the patriarch of a large family, and he didn't hide it, and always said he wanted more kids if he could have, but they had to stop at some point, and he really was, as Levi mentioned, a family man first, and for him to, we know sacrifice so much family time to be out on the road and to attend conferences, is a statement to him that, he was balancing, life and work the way all of us do in Indian country, trying to do the best for your family and provide. But, again, his legacy is as much as people know the public forward part of it. I think Levi and I got to know the person behind all that, and we know that he's a man with a unique story, having grown up in L.A. at a time, when L.A. was still rough and tumble, wasn't all, glitz and glamour like it is now. He was there in the mean streets of L.A. with all the other Native American community there, and he's lived that legacy from AIM all the way up to his dad working for the federal government, and then him doing his advocacy on behalf of Indian country for his life. So it's a great story, and it needs to be told, and we will be telling it for the rest of the year and into next year.
Well, with that, we are out of time. We're going to have to wrap up the show today, but I'd like to thank our guests, Jason Giles, Levi Rickert, and Tina Kuckkahn. Please join us again tomorrow as we'll look at the Trump administration's efforts to revise narratives about Native Americans, including the role U.S. Army soldiers had at the Wounded Knee Massacre. I'm Sean Spruce. You've been listening to the one, the only Native America Calling.
Support for law and justice-related programming provided by Hobbs, Strauss, Dean & Walker, LLP, a national law firm dedicated to promoting and defending tribal rights for over 40 years. More information available at hobbsstrauss.com. Support for journalism that raises the awareness of child well-being to citizens and to policymakers provided by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, building a brighter future for children, families, and communities. Information at aecf.org.
Support by the American Indian College Fund. The American Indian College Fund provides millions of dollars of scholarships to thousands of Native students every year. Tribal citizens of every age and experience are eligible. The deadline for applications is May 31st, and you can find everything you need to apply at collegefund.org. That's collegefund.org, or by phone at 800-766-FUND. Education is the answer.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Kuckkahn Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.